Was a little too early. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome back from your lunch. I hope that you have had the chance to get a nice lunch and maybe also some nice desserts. My name is Lise Valbom, and I've been looking very much forward to moderate this important dialogue this afternoon. I hope that you will join us, and if you need translations, it's also possible for these sessions, of course. So, I'm the CEO of Food Nation, and Food Nation is a public-private partnership working for expressing the strongholds of the Danish agriculture and food sector. And this is why we are very happy to be here today and to exchange ideas and possibilities towards sustainable development for the agriculture and food production on a global level. What I have been listening to this morning is certainly that agriculture is a part of the solution when we look towards a sustainable development, and that dialogue and partnerships are key when we are moving towards a sustainable development. So this is also why I'm really pleased to look at not only the panel here, but all of you. I think that we need to recognize that in this room today, we have so much knowledge, so much experience, that we have a really good opportunity to take a serious dialogue about the important next steps towards sustainable development. So this is why I will really encourage all of you to take part in the dialogue in these panels, and you have the online possibility on your tables, but I will also invite you to engage yourself more physically. So maybe from a beginning, I would like you to answer a question. Because this first panel, this is about the both Brazilian and Danish private sector contribution to sustainable food supply. So we need the business and collaborative perspectives in these next steps. So now I want to ask you a question. I want you, not being in the panel, I want you to engage yourself. You can type it on the online platform. I would like you to answer the question: what will be the private sector contribution with the biggest impact on creating a sustainable food supply? So please take that question into your mind and try to give as short as possible an answer on the online possibility, which you can find on your table. And I will include it in the dialogue later on. So let's get started on this private sector perspective from both the Brazilian and Danish countries. With me in the panel, I am really pleased to introduce Lydia Duerta Silva in the middle. Lydia is Director of International Relations, Brazilian Confederation of Agriculture and Livestock. Let's give her a hand. Welcome. I will also like to introduce Wellington Adrande, Executive Director of Soy and Corn Producers Association from the state of Mato Grosso. Welcome to you as well. And then we have also the retail side with us today by Thomas Roland, CSR, Head of CSR from Coop Denmark. Welcome to you, Thomas. And also we have Claus Såby Eriksen, Chief Policy Advisor from Dakofo. Welcome to you, Claus. And now we have the chance to give the floor to the different panelists for a short introduction from their perspective. So you will have input from each panelist and afterwards we will have the chance for dialogue. So I would like to give the floor from a beginning to Lydia Duarte Silva. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much. Well, good afternoon. It is an honor to have the opportunity to discuss Brazilian and Danish private sector contribution to a sustainable food supply at this fantastic place. It's really amazing here. And especially very nice to be with Wellington Andrade, Thomas Roland, and Klaus Eriksson. Thank you so much. And of course with you, Lisa. And I have to thank you publicly for our meeting yesterday at Food Nation. It was really enlightening to be there. And I have to say that I felt even a little bit jealous because we need to have something like that in Brazil. I hope this should be, I believe, a great outcome from this mission here if we can have something like that in Brazil. I would like also to thank Ambassador Rodrigo Azeredo for organizing and for inviting me on behalf of CNA to be here. Just to start, how do I pass? Okay, thank you. Just to start here my presentation, I would like to tell you what we are, Brazilian Confederation of Agriculture. We are a farmers organization. We represent around 2 million farmers from different cultures in Brazil, from soybean to tropical fruits like mangoes or acai, a fruit from the Amazon. So we represent farmers all over Brazil in 27 states. And we have around 2,000 local unions to support farmers. And we also have one of our most important branch of CNA is SENAR. SENAR is the National Rural Learning Service, and we provide, as the name say, e-learning for farmers. Brazil is a continental country, so you might understand our challenge to give education to farmers, to provide capacity building. So e-learning was popular at SENAR before the pandemic, and of course now it has grown. And we also have this technical and management assistance for farmers. This is very important for us in Brazil because we can provide better knowledge to small and medium-sized landholders. That was just to introduce my organization. And in the former panel, Marcos Yankee told a little bit about an overview of the Brazilian agriculture sector. I will not talk about that, but I want to give you an overview about Brazilian farmers. Because sometimes when we talk about farming in Brazil, everybody just remember, large-scale farming, a lot of tractors, and that's okay, it's fine, it's represent Brazil, but it's not all agriculture, what agriculture is in our country. And this data is from our last census, agricultural census in Brazil. And it's always nice to remember that we have around 5 million farmers in Brazil. It's almost the population of Denmark. And we have 15 million people employed in agriculture. We have 91% of farmers in Brazil, they have less than 100 hectares. It's not so far from Denmark. As I learned yesterday, here the average size of a farm is about 70 hectares. So, not so far, right? And that's for 91% of farmers in Brazil, the reality. So we have 76.8% of farmers, they are family farming. This is around 3.9 million farmers in Brazil. And they have 23% of the agricultural land in the country. That means we are talking about small landholders, right? And 10% of, when we talk about rural technical assistance, we have a very important number here because that I would like you to keep in mind, because this is a real challenge for us. From 2006 to 2017, we had a decrease in technical assistance for small landholders in Brazil, from 22% to 20%. And the lack of technical assistance makes it more difficult for these farmers to produce efficiently and sustainably. We cannot imagine that they can be sustainable if they don't have technical assistance, they don't know how to do it, how they will implement low-carbon technologies without technical assistance. And if we are decreasing the technical assistance in the country, this is a challenge. And another number that I would like to keep you in mind is that 2.6% of farmers have an income below $350 per month. So that's the reality of our farmers. So we need to increase income. That's an urgent need for us in Brazil. And the last thing that's not here, but I think it's really important, is that we have an increasing number of women leading farms in Brazil. And that's a good side of our modern agriculture. We have more women participating in that. But they are around 18% right now in Brazil of farms are led by women. But, however, we have this increasing in women participation. An expressive part of these women are amongst the poorest farmers in the country because they have small farms. And they are in the poorest part of the country, in the northeast region, in regions that they don't have any technical assistance, so they have low productivity. So we believe it's really important to have gender-based policies if you want to have an impact in the economic development in rural areas. This is really important. And from all these numbers, two things I would like to be in your mind, that we need technical assistance and that we need to empower women in the rural areas of Brazil. And I'm saying that because I know you have seen these numbers before. We exported a lot, but we export few products in Brazil. And our target at CNA is to diversify our export agenda, our export trade. And to do that, we need to bring small and medium-sized landholders into the trade because they are not trading yet. They are just producing, but they are not leading the trading process. They are not, selling their products abroad. What we have here are the most modern farmers in Brazil. They are doing very well, but we need now to bring all the others that are left behind. And that's how we believe we will increase our production, the use of land, and we will increase the food production that the world needs, and we will meet the demand using the land that's already in agriculture, is already using for agriculture, but in the hands of small and medium-sized landholders. We need to increase their productivity. And we have many ways to do that. And here, I want to also bring this data from our trade partners, because as also was mentioned previously here, we are changing our, before we had the EU as our first trade partner. But since 2000, China took the lead, and they are the main importers of food today. And of course, they are the most important trade partner for Brazil. But, although I believe it's, we are, at CNA, I can say we are paying really close attention to what's happening in Asia. They are not only China, but as you can see, Japan, South Korea, Vietnam, and Indonesia and Thailand, they're becoming more and more important to us, and that's what we could expect as their population is growing and the income is growing. People are buying more food, okay? And at CNA, we just opened 2 offices abroad, the only offices we have abroad. One in Singapore and one in Shanghai last year. And it's not a coincidence, our only offices abroad are in Asia. But why am I talking about that? That someone could think, oh, then the EU doesn't matter anymore. That's not the point, not at all. Actually, it's the opposite. I was invited here because the ambassador wanted me to talk about this project. It's called AgroBR. This project we are developing, and I will explain, and we will link with our trade exports to China. We are developing this for small and medium-sized companies in the agri-sector. I say companies because normally farmers, they don't export by themselves. They export through cooperatives, associations, different companies. So we support those companies to export to different markets. And guess who is the first market? It's the EU. The EU buys most of the products we export through this project. Of course, when we see the numbers, to China, we export $30 billion. In this project, we exported to the EU $56 million. So, of course, we need to improve this figure. And that's what we want to do through this project, to help those companies to export sustainable products. And when I say sustainable, it's not only environmental sustainable, but also social sustainable, socially sustainable to the EU. And this is my final slide, and I would like just to highlight here some concerns that we have. The first one is we know the world population is growing, not only in number, but their need to eat, to have more food, and that increases the demand of agricultural products in general. We need to meet this demand. And so for us, it's really hard to talk about policies that will limit production, as I believe Mr. Fleming was saying about that in his speech in the beginning of this seminar. For us, it's something that it's really hard to understand because we need more food, not less food. And in the world, of course, we need to tackle food losses and other issues. But together with that, we need to produce more food. We need to increase our production. And sustainability is not something that we need to improve our production, and maybe in a sustainable way. Sustainability has to be the only way. There's no other way to produce more food without sustainable practices. We have this growing concern for food safety and food security. After the pandemic especially, we have a great concern with food safety, but food security is still an issue. And as you all might know, starvation, hunger is increasing in the world after the pandemic. So it's something that we need to tackle, and we need to tackle urgently. And the last thing is financial support for the green transition. I know here in the EU, you have this common policy, agriculture policy that will support your farmers. Unfortunately, we don't have that in Brazil. So we have to find creative ways to support the green transition, and especially for small and medium farmers, because large-scale farmers, they are more likely to adapt. They have the ways to do the investments. Small-scale farming, it's not that easy. And I hear a lot about green bonds, ESG funds, but I really don't understand yet, and I would like to learn actually about that, how we will use these funds for small farmers, because it's hard to measure. To measure the targets that you are setting. And when you have a lot of farmers, the cost of the transactional cost for banks, for example, for the financial system, it's huge. So who will bear with this cost, But we need them. Otherwise, it won't be any green transition without small and medium-sized farmers. So we need to answer that. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lydia. No, please stay up there for just a short while. Let's just take a look at all these really interesting initiatives that you brought up. So many relevant initiatives regarding both e-learning, involvement of women in the small-scale agriculture, and also the growing ones, and this AgroBR project. If you could point to one of these actions, what do you see right now as the most, what has the most impact, the biggest impact in the sustainable development direction?
For farmers, I believe we need to scale up technical assistance. We need that urgently, actually, because technical assistance can bring all the technologies that we are developing for a green transition, and especially technologies that will be discussed in the next panel for innovation. We can take this technology from research centers to farmers. So that's what we need to do right now.
And I guess your message is also that it has to fit the small-scale farmers.
Yeah.
This technology.
Yeah, for sure. There's
all kind of levels.
One-size solution, one fits all. You can't do that. For small and medium-sized farmers, they need different solutions. And as Brazil is so big, we have different biomes, different climates, different soil. You need to tackle that issue too, because in every region will be a different solution.
But technology.
Yeah,
that's one of
technology.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Let's give you a
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Okay, and I just want to let you know that there's still room for answers on the online chat function. If you have some answers to the questions, to my question to you, of what will be the initiative from the private sector with the biggest impact towards a sustainable development? I can tell you that so far I've only had one answer to the question. So don't hold yourself back. But now we will move on to the panel, and the next speaker is Wellington Adrande, Executive Director of Soy and Corn Producers Association from the state of Mato Grosso. And I would like to inform you that the slides is in English, but the speech will be in Portuguese. So, can I have some translation devices for the panel up here? Well, I think we need at least 3. Yes.
Floor is mine.
Yes, now the mic is yours.
Okay, thank you.
Please take the stage. Let's give Wellington a hand. and let's just have a chance to get our technical devices on. Thank you. Oh. Then. Okay, now I think we're ready.
Okay. Well, allow me to speak in Portuguese in respect to my fellows, to my Brazilian fellows. I'll be speaking Portuguese. Bom, primeiramente gostaria de agradecer o convite e cumprimentar.
So first of all, let me greet for the invitation that was addressed to me, and I would also like to greet the host, Mr. Rodrigo Azeredo, and also to greet the governor of the state of Mato Grosso and the whole commission that came with us. So I would also like to greet all the public and also the remote public. So to start my presentation, I'd like to talk to you about what AproSoja is all about. This is an association in Mato Grosso representing the soya and maize production in Mato Grosso. In Brazil, we are the biggest soya producers and maize producers, and we produce nearly 1/3 of national maize and corn. So if not, Mato Grosso would be a country, would rank the 4th position in the world ranked when compared to the US and Argentina. AproSoja was founded in 2005 by the Mato Grosso population, and we have the following. In Brazil and also in Mato Grosso, this is a reality. So AproSoja has its office in the capital of the state of Mato Grosso in Cuiabá, and it has more than 7,500 members. Small and big producers, 83% of which are small and medium producers. And they ensure the availability and the security of soya production. The governor of the state of Mato Grosso referred to the use and the occupation of national soy. So I will only talk about the state use of the soil in Mato Grosso. We produce soya and maize and also cotton, grains as a whole, in around 12.5% of the territory. The remaining percentage is occupied with pasture and grazing. And we also preserve 61% of the territory with native vegetation and 41% of total native population inside the Mato Grosso estate are inside the farms. So 4.5% is about conservation units, and 15.4% is about indigenous soil. This is a comparison of the growth of soybean yield and the reduction of deforestation in Mato Grosso, while the productivity has increased for 20 years above 18.8 million tons when compared to 2020. The deforestation was cut 10 square 10 square meters. So we have indeed this trend in comparison with the decrease on the deforestation level. Now, talking about ESG, I would like to show you in a few slides how the soya producers in Mato Grosso are already abiding by the ESG guidelines, and I will start breaking it down with starting with the environmental pillar. So the governor has already stated that there is a more inclusive goal, which is the European goal, and a high percentage of producers are engaged in deforestation. And Professor Seri from ESALC has referred to a work we are carrying out in partnership with the university in order to calculate carbon footprint of soya and also the calculation needed in order to reduce this carbonization. And this will certainly be added to the state planning in order to fulfill this goal by the year 2035. Agriculture's protect biodiversity, and the law it makes it compulsory that the savannas should have 12% of inactive soil, and they are supposed to manage their resources naturally and manually, protecting the sources. And we will see later on a project we have which monitors all the water springs existing in the area. And they also practice sustainable agriculture by optimizing the sewage system, reverse logistics, and also pesticides packaging, which is also included in the social sphere. All packagings that are used are not left in the land. It comes back to be washed for 3 times, and then it might be recovered for recycling or even for repackaging. And so they abide by the labor legislation in order to fight against child labor. It also is about safety of food. In Mato Grosso, in order for a producer to apply a pesticide, he should have the prescription of an agronomist, because pesticides cannot be applied without any monitoring. And this is also about social investment, optimizing the local community. In terms of governance, we are committed with the whole productive chain of soya, since industry, supply, service providers. It also manages costs by monitoring investments and the trading thereof. They also preserve transparency by preventing corruption. We know Brazil, ProSoja is a legal entity which abides by local legislation, produces with quality by monitoring the intrinsic capacity of its products, both soya and maize. And this producer also is looking to improve their best practices by controlling and monitoring rural risks concerning the environment, and also by encouraging the best agriculture practices and social and environmental practices. So the whole ESG content, which is already applied by soya and maize producers, we have created this program, which is Soja Legal Soya, which is about the preservation of natural resources in the state of Mato Grosso. This program is supposed to change the way in which soya is regarded worldwide, and therefore we need to have persons, public opinion by our side, the whole chain, the whole production chain should be by our side. We have relaunched this project, although continuous improvements were already being done. So we have already made 30,000 square meters of soya production already implemented in the state of Mato Grosso. So we are aligned with the main compliance rules applied internationally. And ProSoja has already executed a memorandum of understanding with FEFAC and FEDIOL for sustainable production, and we had also executed an memorandum of understanding with Chinese producers, where we have entailed to carry on sustainable production, and we are also aligned with FAO guidelines. All of these compliance rules, the compliance with international rules, apart from it, we have our own guidelines, which are, of course, in connection with the FIFAC guidelines, but the local ones, which have to do with the compliance with labor law and environmental law, are about 167 guidelines, which help the producers to be compliant with all the regulations. Here we have some of them. And we already have 1,619 farms in the soya legal program, and this represents 3.2 million hectares of soya, 2,505 members, which accounts for 33.4% of the soya, which is already included in this soya legal program. We also provide the monitoring of the preservation of water springs inside the farms. We have also another program under the name of Guardião de Águas, the gatekeepers of waters, where we guide the preservation of water resources inside the farms. Another example of this program, Guardião das Águas, the gatekeeper of waters, we have listed all the municipalities. We have monitored something like 64,000 water springs inside farms, which accounts for 35% of the whole plants that are already monitored. Sorriso is also a municipality, actually the biggest soya producing municipality in the world. We have something like 2 million tons of soybeans which are produced now in Sorriso. And we also, this is done, 96% of water spring inside the farms in Sorriso are already preserved. And how do we monitor this? Through a platform, a GeoCloud tool. This is a digital platform under the name of GeoCloud. We put inside the platform all the regulations, all the national regulations, such as those from IBA, INCRA, IBA, and the Secretary of State of Planning and in the Environment, so that we can consolidate the data in a geographical environmental database. And this is how we see these springs being duly classified. To my left, we have springs which are very well preserved inside the rural property, and in the middle we have good preservation, and to the left regular type of preservation, and to the lower part of it this is an image of the monitoring actions concerning this preservation and the recovery of those water sources. So this accounts for 95% of water springs that are duly preserved inside the state farms. Now, talking about the SDG, and this is, of course, all producers, all farmers are already contributing considerably to their municipality, but ProSoja, together with the producers, are developing several social projects, namely the distribution of soya based drinks for the population in need, and we serve nearly 15,000 persons per year. We have partnerships with indigenous population in the state of Mato Grosso, to whom we also provide technical assistance, and we also teach them how to grow soya bean and maize in scale to be transacted. So we do respect indigenous communities, we do respect biomas, the Pantanal of Amazonas and Cerrado, and our production is a sustainable one. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for taking us on a trip for these really interesting and ambitious initiatives. I think you gave us all a really good overview of the ESG guidelines. So I have one question. Could you share with us what is the most important to make it a success among the farmers? When do you succeed making it applied by the farmers?
Na verdade, os produtores já estão aplicando esses guidelines, né? Hoje, se a gente for
Well, in fact, producers are already applying these guidelines. And if we have an average of the whole state, of the whole production, probably all producers are already capable of adhering to the soya legal program. Why? Because they are already registered in the national registry. They also preserve their production in the legal farms from the springs as well, and it also abides with all labor regulations and all the environmental regulations implemented in Brazil. So all the producers abiding by these requirements are already under the soya legal program.
Thank you.
Thank-
There was a little bit of delay on the translation. Thank you very much, Mr. Wellington Adrande. Thank you very much for sharing
Thank
your
you.
experiences.
Thank you
Let's
all.
give him a hand. Thank you. So we will move on in the panel, and the next panelist with us is Thomas Roland, responsible for the corporate social responsibility, among others, in the Coop Denmark retail business. The floor is yours.
Thank you. See if my slide appears. Thank you very much for the invitation, first of all. It's an honor for me to be here as a representative. I'll try to do my best as a representative of the Danish retail sector. I can start by just explaining very shortly about our company, because I didn't include that in my presentation. We are actually owned by our consumers. 2 million Danes own our company, and we run around 1,000 different supermarkets in this country. And altogether, we have a turnover per year of around 7 billion euros. If I look at the products we have on our shelves, I can say that probably more than 50% of them will have some kind of international dimension. Either the feed or some ingredients in what we sell comes from global value chains that often originates very far from here. And therefore, I think it's also very important to stress that we really believe in the possibility of us engaging into global trade, also being able to you can say, create a more sustainable value chain, more sustainable value chains by entering into dialogue in the value chain. So this is key to our approach to CSR, to corporate social responsibility. I have to say, despite our quite small direct trade with Brazilian companies, it's indirect, most of our trade with Brazil, because it comes through soy or other commodities that's used in feed or processed. I have actually only 4 points in my slides, and I'll give them to you right here, and then I'll touch briefly upon each of them in the following slides. First of all, looking from a Danish market or Danish consumer perspective, sustainability is really the key and also the future key to attractive markets, like high-value markets like the Danish, for instance. Consumer expectations towards sustainability is high, and they are rising. And I'll come back to that and what that means. Also, looking from our perspective, which is, as I've already said, quite far away from the actual primary production, many places in the world, the global value chain might seem very challenging when it comes to transparency and documentation about what is actually going on, not only to tier 1, but also deeper down in the value chain. And this is important for us to be able to answer our consumers, our customers, all the way back to the source. Then I'll touch upon our quality requirements and you can say our approach to risk reduction. And finally, a wish list for the future. I think there are roles to all of us in this room if we want to improve the sustainability of the food and commodity trade. This slide, probably a bit hard to read, but actually it just shows a survey we made to we asked the Danish consumers, to what extent are you concerned about? And then we listed 25 different issues that people could be concerned about, environmentally, socially, etc., sustainability issues. You should bear in mind that the 2 blue parts of the slide here, that's actually the people who said to a very high degree or a very high degree. Very high degree or high degree, they are concerned. So that means that more than 50% of all our customers, they are really concerned about, for instance, plastic ending up in nature and the sea, pollution of the drinking water, loss of animal species and plant species, so biodiversity risks, the temperature rising, global warming, and then toxic chemicals in food that might enter the food chain. What you should bear in mind here is that loss of biodiversity is actually more important to our customers than climate change, if you look upon this in this simple survey. Therefore, I'm of course very happy to hear this talk also this morning about climate change, but really I think we need to talk about biodiversity every time we talk about climate change also, because if we don't tackle both issues at the same time, we actually face another risk in a moment. You can also see that food security, not being able to feed my family, is not even on the top 12 list here, because from a Danish consumer perspective, that's really not an issue. Even the risk of me getting ill from what I eat is only on the 9th place here. So it's other risks that's apparent to Danish consumers. And this is, of course, our owners and who we are listening to. When we look upon, as I said, global value change, we find specifically 4 key areas that we need to address in our policies. One of them is, as I've said, loss of biodiversity. When we are talking about loss of biodiversity, we're actually not just talking about deforestation. We've heard a lot of talk about deforestation this morning. Deforestation is only one way you can actually lose biodiversity. We're talking about all kinds of conversion, you can say, of natural habitats into farmland or grazing pastures, which we actually also count as farmland. And of course, it's also overexploiting of fish resources or whatever. Then lack of transparency in general in the value chain. This is, of course, also of high concern to us because it rises the risk of fraud taking place in the value chain far from where we are standing today. And also it is unclear to us whether the policies we are enforcing does actually help. So this is a major issue. And then, not to forget that human rights violations is also a major risk when we're dealing with international value chain. Mostly we are addressing unacceptable working conditions or low wages, but it's also violation against indigenous people's rights. That's part of that area in our CSR strategy. And finally, I'd like to mention that risk countries, that's countries where we see that the legislation or the enforcement of legislation is inadequate in order to ensure us that our standards are met, is also one of the major issues that we are looking into. What's our approach then? Well, our approach is that we identified a lot of risk raw materials, you can say, and risk countries. Talking about risk countries, we use the business BSCI list of risk countries. Brazil is actually one of the risk countries in the BSCI definition of a risk country. And then we have a lot of raw materials where we, for each of these raw materials, set up specific criteria for what should we make sure of before we can actually trade with raw materials, especially from risk countries. And that's timber, that's beef, soy, palm oil, but it's also coffee, tea, and cocoa, and to a lesser extent also sugar, rubber, cotton, and juice, which are sort of our top list. What do we demand then? Well, we demand zero deforestation and conversion-free value chain, and that's what we tell our suppliers. I think it's important to stress again here that when we say zero deforestation and conversion-free, it also means conversion of other land areas than the ones that's covered with forests. We don't distinguish, by the way, between legal and illegal clearing of forest or nature, and we don't distinguish between forest and other habitats, as I've said. And if we make a top list of where in the world do we look with especially care, then I have to say that the Amazon basin is of course on our top priority area. It's also because it's probably the name that most consumers and most of the public audience also in this country have heard about the risk of losing too much forest there. But when we look into the details, Gran Chaco or the Cerrado, I could also name Pantanal, will of course also be on the list, as well as the Congo Basin in Africa and big parts of the Indonesian rainforests. So these are the areas where we need to be extra alert, seen from our perspective. What do we do then? Yeah, well, first of all, we support the Accountability Framework Initiative, and we try to you can say, use the principles that they lay out for how to actually engage into sustainable value chain and sustainable trade. We've also engaged into the Danish Dialogue for Sustainable Soy and Danish Dialogue for Sustainable Palm Oil, which is a multi-stakeholder, you can say, covering the whole value chain network, where we are together discussing how can we address the issues in these specific commodities. Then what we do is right now, you can say, in lack of a better alternative, we buy credits, sustainability credits, you can call them, RTRS or Pro-Terra credits on soy, RSPO credits on palm oil. But actually, what we would like to have is, of course, fully transparent and segregated value streams so we can follow the commodities we are trading. We cannot do that at the moment. It's not possible on Brazilian soy, for instance, to actually trace it all the way. Not unless we want to bear an extreme extra cost, that is. And finally, my last point here is that I say we strive for science-based targets. It's not just because we've committed ourselves into science-based targets in terms of climate, that we have adopted a climate policy there, but in general it means that we are listening to scientists when we try to find out how should we address our CSR policies and what should we actually do. Therefore, we also hear them say to us, well, yes, 25% of the climate issue is actually related to agriculture and production, but 80% of the biodiversity loss is directly related to production of food and agriculture. So you can see we really need to address these issues both at the same time. So finally, if I could make a wish list for stakeholders, to myself, to the Danish government, and to all other representatives also in this room, I'll say, first of all, look at what I say here as kind of a canary in the coal mine. Maybe the demands I have expressed here today will be more than most exporters will meet when they are in a commodity deal, a commodity trade situation. But I think that this might be what you could expect to meet on future markets, maybe even from China. I'll always also say, look at investors. Investors, they leave the game before the buyers leave the game. We are buyers, but look at the investors. They are very often scared of risks on a longer perspective than we are. Then hopefully and luckily everybody wants to be part of a positive development, and that brings me a lot of hope actually, because everyone in this room I hear are engaged in how can we create sustainable value change, because we want to be part of the solution, and I think we are and we can be part of the solution, all of us. But then again, to sum up, sustainability means that many issues has to be tackled at the same time, not just only climate. A lot of people have said that already this day. Secondly, transparency and accountability in the whole chain is really what we as retailers with the end contact to the end consumers would like to get some help to achieve. Right now, we have difficulties in securing segregated streams. When we are, for instance, want to buy beef from Brazil, we can only get assurance onto tier 1 from where does that beef actually come from. How difficult could it be to actually make a system to follow the cattle from birth to the slaughterhouse? It's possible in Europe. I think it will be possible in Brazil too. We hope so. And then finally, I'll say, hopefully we can simplify the jungle of certification schemes. As I said, right now we rely on RTRS and ProTerra regarding soy, for instance. But in reality, would it be nice if we just had a single standard globally? It is as if there's almost a commodity trade going on certification schemes as well. And we really hope that this will be more simple in the future. And finally, my last word, remember always that sustainability is a moving target. Right now, we are addressing what we can see today and what we know today, but tomorrow we will be wiser. And we always need to strengthen our policies in our company, but also the certification agencies, etc., needs to keep up with the increasing demands and knowledge of what is needed to address sustainability. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Thomas. And certainly, I'm quite sure that we all get the quite good impression that you are best in class when we look at the retail business. I mean, you have so many initiatives trying to navigate in a sustainable supply chain. But Thomas, if I ask you on a time schedule, if you look at the next 1 to 2 years, what will be the most important initiative from your side, having the most important impact regarding?
I think that will be. I think that probably will be to address biodiversity even more than we do today. And we are waiting for the science-based targets on biodiversity to appear as well. We know that there's work undergoing, because that will enable companies like ours to take our responsibility there as well. So I think this is the issue, this is the area that needs focus now.
And then I also heard some applause when you said we need more simple certification systems.
Yeah.
We need to simplify what we already have today. Yeah, and we need to do that on an international level.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Let's give Thomas a hand. Thank you very much. And let me just tell you that I have had quite a few good inputs on my above all question. Let me just repeat the question. We are in the panel right now regarding the private sector contribution to sustainable food supply. So my question to you, and you can use the chat function, is what will be the private sector contribution with the biggest impact on creating sustainable food supply? And there's still room for inputs. So now we'll move on to the panel's last speaker, and that will be Claus Søby Eriksen, Chief Policy Advisor from DACOFO. The floor is yours, Claus.
Thank you, Lise.
Let's give Claus a hand.
Okay. Good afternoon, and thank you. Thank you to the embassy, and thank you to the organizers of this great event. I think it's great that we can gather here to discuss such an important theme, and I think based on the discussions this morning and also already on this panel, I think we have a lot of good initiatives and a good understanding of where the needs are, and hopefully we can improve the understanding along the chain, and I think that's hopefully part of the best solution, that we even improve that dialogue along the chain even further. But first of all, I just want to take a very short time to just explain who DACOFO is. DACOFO is the association representing the Danish grain and feed companies, also representing all the companies trading and broking, within broking of the feed and agricultural commodities. We represent more than 60 companies, representing the entire Danish business here, all organized in DACOFO. And of course, we are happy that we can have this discussion today. The panel here is about how we can improve, say, the private sector engagement to improve sustainable food production. And I just want to take a few slides just to explain our view on this. Of course, we are heavily engaged in the entire feed sector, and of course, that will take up most of the focus here today. We are united in a common vision and common approach in Denmark, in the association and all the companies we're representing. We are a small country, although we have great, huge trade internationally. We're part of the global trade with agricultural commodities, also heavily engaged in trading with Brazil and among other countries. So of course, we have an international approach. We are a small country. We cannot make changes ourselves alone. We have to think a bigger picture. And I think already we also heard some great political ambitions, and we also know the ambitions on a European level. So of course we have to keep that in mind when we talk about how we can improve our positioning, our global alignment. We have to put that into an international view. We, of course, are heavily engaged through our international partner, FEFAC, the European Association for Compound Feed Manufacturers. They are the main driver when we talk about global and European sustainability in the feed sector. We focused a lot on the climate-related agendas, and we know that new feed solutions is the way to improve impact from the livestock production on the climate effects. We talk about green feed and green feed solutions as an important part here. And I will also take just a very short few slides to introduce the FEFAC Sustainability Charter, which is, say, the core of our work here in Denmark and our alignment in an European perspective. The charter, you can see it here on the slide, is compiled of 5 pillars. And if I change it here, you will see the 5 pillars in the middle, which represents 5 ambitions regarding how we can contribute to climate-neutral livestock production, how we can foster sustainable food systems through increased resources and nutrient efficiency, We also talk about promoting responsible sourcing practices, something that we have already touched upon this morning, and I will elaborate a bit further on that in a few minutes. We also have a focus on contributing to improving farm animal health and welfare. And finally, not last, we have an ambition regarding improving, say, the economic resilience of the entire food production within Europe, and of course also within Denmark when we talk about the COFO. And as you can see here, all these 5 pillars, they also contribute both to, say, European policies on the lower part, and on the upper part, we also link them up directly to the SDG goals. And of course, there is a great link here between those two. If I may just say something on the contribution ambition number 1, we know that, of course, livestock production, be it globally, be it in European context, has a large effect on greenhouse gas emissions. So we know that there's something for us as feed company, as feed sector to do. We have already developed tools in a private collaboration regarding tools to evaluate and monitor the carbon footprint on individual feed components. So it's possible for us actually to through innovation to improve the feeding, improve the climate footprint for individual feed components. And that's something that we can also elaborate on when we talk about it at a global level. We have the GFLI database, which is globally accepted and where everybody can feed in their agricultural commodities that is directed towards feed. And that's something that we can go further with, I hope. We also work to foster sustainable food systems through resource and nutrient efficiency. This is a part where we want to increase, say, the use of byproducts, co-products. So we will, of course, here take advantage, converting side products into valuable food products that can be sold to at a global level, and thereby also increasing the value of, say, side streams or co-products. And then, of course, the big thing here: how can we promote our responsible sourcing practices? And if I may just line this one up, this is the FEFAC soy sourcing guidelines, which was already recognized, and I fully acknowledge here the work and the good dialogue that we have already with APOSOIA. This is the European feed manufacturers' take on what is the ambition level for soy, which would be considered responsible in a European perspective. The soy sourcing guideline was updated earlier this year, 2021, in February. And as we have heard this morning, there's a lot of focus also on, I mean, we heard it just from the retailers here. We need to also be able to deliver not only on deforestation-free, but also on conversion-free. That's a clear market signal from Europe. It's a clear market signal for the retailers, for the consumers, and also for the European political agenda, and also the Ministry of Agriculture and Fisheries, Food, on the other side of the street out here, just delivered an action plan, national action plan on deforestation-free commodities supply chains. So this is something that we need to work with, and something that we're also committed to do in Denmark. And if I may just say, this is a slide of the European Soy Monitor report that's being published every year. What we can see is that we're actually moving in the right direction. We're getting more attraction towards soy imported to Europe that is compliant with the FEFAC soy sourcing guidelines. We also see that we actually can deliver on deforestation-free certified, but when we talk about certified, I fully recognize that we have something here. Maybe we need to elaborate a bit further on a better approach on that. And then maybe that's what we can do with the FEFAC soy sourcing guideline. We can actually maybe create a international acceptable standard on that. And of course, if we look at, say, not only certified, but if we look into the trade statistics, we can see that 80% of the soy imported into Europe comes from low or no deforestation risk areas. So, okay, if we say 25%, that's only certified, but if you look at the trading statistics, it gives a much more exact figure. And okay, still we have still 20% that we need to focus on, and that's maybe where we should focus. So, if I may just round this up, just a few examples on how we work in Denmark. We have national commitments for sustainable protein supply. We made that already in 2019 as a total sector. We planted the flag and said no later than 2025 we will be in line with FEFAC soy sourcing guidelines. The soy sourcing guidelines is a key driver. This is the only way we, as European small country, Denmark, can see that we can actually make changes and also maybe give some good answers and dialogue with our chain partners on how to mainstream something that would be responsible. We are a member, as the co-founder in the Danish feed sector, are a member of the Danish Ethical Trade, who's also here today. And in the roundtable of responsible soy and responsible palm oil, we have good dialogue with the chain partners, with the NGOs, with the retailers, with the ministry, and we can hopefully there create a common understanding how we can drive a more sustainable food production, and also we can hopefully broaden that out on an international level so we can understand each other better, see what are the market drivers, where are the, which direction are we heading in terms of the trends here. And finally, but not last, I will just say that we have this Sustainability Charter 2030, and we also in that charter have some national commitments that we as feed industry across Europe, individual countries have committed ourselves to follow, to support the charter, but we're also taking some national commitments on how to implement these 5 pillars. So maybe that would be my 5 minutes or a little bit more. Sorry for that.
Thank you very much, Claus. Let's give Claus a hand. And thank you very much for taking us into the FEFAC ambitions here, Claus. I know there's a lot of really interesting things also going on the Danish market regarding the supply chain, and especially with a focus on protein. We are talking about how can we be more self-sufficient and maybe reduce the import of protein. Is that something that you are bringing into the FEFAC work, or how do you look at this Danish initiatives regarding self-sufficiency on soya, on protein?
On protein. Yeah, for sure. I mean, we, if you look at the signals from the European Commission, there's no doubt that improving self-supply of proteins for feed, but also actually also for food, is of high focus. You can see that in several ways. Also going into the common agricultural policy with concrete initiatives. We also have that in Denmark. I mean, look at the action plan that was just created from the Ministry of Agriculture. And as a business, we are heavily engaged in that as well. We are definitely also working as an association, but also the companies that we represent are heavily engaged in improving production of feed and food proteins for multiple purposes. Goes for instance, for biorefining of grass proteins. We have legumes and other starfish, etc. So we have definitely are focusing on how to improve the production of sustainable feed proteins, feed and food proteins with a low carbon emission footprint. And that will hopefully go hand in hand with also with a continued trade with partners abroad who can deliver responsible produced proteins for the European market.
So it will not stand alone. It has to be supplemented.
Yeah. Absolutely. I don't see Denmark becoming self-supplying. Totally. No, absolutely not. There will definitely be ongoing trade with partners from Brazil, from other countries, definitely. And I actually see it as, I mean, soy is a fantastic food, feedstuff. No doubt about that. Okay. So for sure, we will continue with that.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Claus. We will give you a hand again. Okay, and now, everyone, I can tell you that I have had quite a few inputs on the questions that I asked in the beginning. So what are the private sector initiatives with the biggest impact regarding the creation of a sustainable food supply? The inputs, they kind of cover some of the areas that the panel has also touched upon. They mention technology to all kinds of farming types. We also have an input saying the private sector has to contribute to the transition to plant-based diet, increasing due diligence. And also we have an input saying that we need to make it more easy for consumers to make sustainable choices in their everyday life. And yes, so that's about it for now. So maybe we could have a quick reflection from the panel on the different input from you, and also on the input that we got from the participants here today. So this is about the private sector engagement in creating sustainable food supply. I will give you the first opportunity to reflect on this one.
In Portuguese?
That is, of course, an option. Yes, you are more than welcome.
Na verdade, como eu disse,
Well, in fact, as I said before, the producers,
especialmente no estado do Mato Grosso,
especially in the Mato Grosso state and also in Brazil as a whole, they don't adopt sustainable practices on a short term. This is something that comes from long before, as I showed you in this timeline of 20 years ago, where productivity disappeared and also deforestation has disappeared. So we understand the demand for the zero deforestation. We do understand this is an European demand, but we also understand that our legislation in Brazil must be sovereign. We are totally against illegal deforestation. However, we think that if Europe would like to have a zero net deforestation, that this service should be paid for. On why? Because today we have more than 60% of native vegetation preserved in Brazil, 40% inside rural proprieties. Although this is an asset, an environmental asset, it is also a liability for the producer because they are taking care of something which will be useful for the whole society, although he's not being paid anything for that. It's the same as you purchasing an apartment or a house, and you can only use, only allowed to use 20% of your house, and the remaining 80% have to be left untouched, because you will be preserving things for the society as a whole, but on the other hand, you're not having any return for your preservation. So this is what we would like the European community as a whole to understand this, especially those who demand for net zero deforestation, that they have to pay for the service provision.
Okay, thank you very much. Yes,
Thank you.
so we need some economy to follow the different initiatives. Good, thank you very much. One of the inputs from the audience here today was about making it more easy for the consumers to make sustainable choices. I think this one is for you, Thomas. Maybe you can reflect on that. Is it okay as it is today, or do we need to do more?
No, we definitely need to do more. But actually, I'm not sure that we should leave the choices to the end consumer. What we would like to do is actually to make sure that everything that's on the shelf in our supermarket is okay. You shouldn't actually go in and be able to point at a product and say, this is just not sustainable. So in reality, you can say there are two strains to this. We can never just leave that decision to the consumers. We need to strengthen our guidelines, our principles, our way of addressing the global value change. And therefore, another one of the comments you mentioned before, that we need probably better, stronger due diligence processes. I totally agree. We need to engage deeper into our value chains, and we cannot just simply look at risk countries and risk raws. The risks are everywhere, and we can only address them by engaging ourselves even deeper into the value chain we're trading with. So that's on the one end. On the other end, of course, we'd like to provide information to our customers and how can they also themselves make the most sustainable choice on the shelf. But it's really not fair to leave the biodiversity crisis or the climate crisis to their choices.
Thank you very much, Thomas. This is why we are all here together today, in order to take responsible action. So, Ligia Duerta Silva, there was certainly someone reflecting on your point on technology. You are more than welcome to reflect on that one again. What will be the most important next step in order to make it happen, or would you like to reflect on some of the other inputs?
Well, about technology, just one thing. Sometimes people think we need very complex technology. But that's not the truth. Sometimes what is missing is very simple, actually. It's just access to, to better feeding or things really simple, but they are just not available for small farmers. And I really want to come up with something that you said here about certification, because certification and labeling schemes these days are the main barrier we face for this 1,000 companies enrolled in our project. The main trade barrier they face is labeling schemes. This is so wrong. We have to do it something better, you know, because it's costly. And small farmers, small companies, they can't bear the cost of labeling schemes. That's not the solution. It can be one solution, but can't be the only one. So we need rules that will be applied for all, and not a lot of rules like labeling schemes. This is not the answer at all.
I agree.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Klaus, now you have had both the European and the Danish perspective. What is your perspective more on the certification side? Maybe just a few more words on that one from your side.
Well, maybe if I may put myself in the middle here. On the one hand, we have the market, the pull from the market. On the other hand, we also have to respect that farmers have to have incentives for their production. So for sure, we need to make sure that the consumers also are aware of the choice that they're taking, and also aware of taking the burden on the economy, on rewarding for the products. I mean, that's an important thing here, and that's the only way I think we can solve this is to work together along the chain to make sure that the consumer demands are also rewarded. But of course, there's also be something, of course, for the supply chain, but it also has to do. There's also a responsibility in the producing country to set up the rules to make sure that farmers are rewarded at national level. So that was just maybe just the first comment. Then you asked about labeling, and I think we are asking, of course, and I think that's important. Also, if you look into what we are facing now with the European Commission coming into to proposals on due diligence, we need transparency along the chain, and I think we need, of course, also to come to an understanding on how we can improve that transparency. And I mentioned the FEFAC soy sourcing guidelines as our approach to say this is not one standard alone. This is an ambition level to say what the European market think is performance level for entry into the food chains in Europe. And I think we're not basing here ourselves on one single standard or one single certification scheme. We're just setting the bar at an ambition level, and hopefully we can, with the market pull from the retailers, we can, and with the work from the entire industry and the entire chain, we can increase the level and increase also sustainability. But we have to do it together, and that's also that's the answer to labeling here. Maybe we should agree on a common understanding on the ambition level, and I think we will provide our suggestion to that, and hopefully also the market in Europe will accept that.
Thank you very much, Klaus. And from my perspective, I have been witnessing a lot of good input from a private sector perspective, a lot of good input from all of you. Thank you very much for engaging yourself. And what I have the feeling right now is certainly that a lot of really relevant and important projects are going on across the different countries, and we need to move on building these initiatives together. So for now, we will say thank you very much for this panel with the private sector perspective. Thank you very much.
Thank you.